Hey everybody, it's me, finally back here in the good old US of A. I've decided to put together a little presentation to help me best share my Panamanian experience with all of you guys. So in the next few minutes, I'll be covering the topics that you see over to the left-hand side of your screen, using a series of photos to illustrate what I've been up to for the last year. First off, let me share a little bit about my Fulbright project itself. The Fulbright proposal that I wrote was to study corruption in Panamanian government contracting, which is basically when somebody who has an improper relationship with a government minister arranges himself to win a profitable contract, such as building a bridge, despite not necessarily being the best one for the job. Such profit sharing between corrupt government officials and businessmen is directly stealing from taxpayers. So I interviewed over 50 people in Spanish and read thousands of pages of reports, memos, and articles in order to put together an objective analysis of synergies that could be explored among the stakeholder institutions and reforms that could be made in order to avoid corruption by using the multi-million-dollar Panama Compra project that was already underway. I'm happy to report that the government offices I was working with were extremely receptive to my findings and even invited me to lead roundtable discussions and outright presentations at their premises. I was also lucky for the opportunity to have one-on-one sessions with high-ranking government officials such as Jorge Quijada, the Secretary General of the Contraloría, and the directors of the Department of Treasury and Public Contracting. But most of the people I reached personally were through my university conferences, such as this one you see on the poster for the University of Panama. At this conference, I was given a great introduction by Panamanian Congressman Alejandrino Jimenez and was able to work an audience of over 200 Panamanian government officials, businessmen, and UN employees regarding the topic of corruption in public contracting. Even cooler was this presentation at the Universidad Latina, in which the moderator allowed for a much freer exchange of ideas that led to some great debate. For example, the lady in the bottom right of this screen, Maribel Cuervas de Paredes, has been the host of one of Panama's most popular political TV shows for the past 20 years. Maribel went back and forth with me for about 10 minutes, and she was furious that I would dare to say that Panama's government was making any progress toward fighting corruption, because she is very, very anti-government. But in the end, it all worked out well, because she approached me after the conference and invited me to dinner at her house. Evidence to back up everything I was saying could be found in my written report, Combate a la Corrupción en las Contrataciones Públicas, which is actually now required reading in some professors' classes at the University of Panama and at others across the country. I also published my findings in an article in Panama's national newspaper on July 3rd, which viewed corruption in a more positive light than most other articles in the past had, and to which I received very good feedback from most Panamanians who read it. I was also able to share my conclusions at a seminar that the U.S. State Department organized in El Salvador for Fulbright Fellows across other Central American countries. There we were able to hear topics as diverse as Nicaragua's glue-sniffing epidemic among street children, Costa Rica's CAFTA referendum, Panama's Afro-Antillean culture, Guatemala's genocide trials, Honduras' education system, and Costa Rica's prostitute rights. Overall, the Central American Fulbrighters were amazing people, and we all hope to stay in touch long after our amazing week that we spent together in El Salvador. Anyway, I promised that I had another life in Panama besides just working and researching. Let me start by showing you where I lived. I arrived on October 3rd, 2006 into Panama City, which is where my project would be centered. In the limited amount of time that I had to find an apartment, the best that I could do at first was this dingy place that was surrounded by Colombian prostitutes, I soon found out. Now, I admit, when I first found out who my neighbors were, I was definitely a bit shocked. But once I learned that none of them ever brought any of their clients home to the house, it ended up becoming a harmless and actually quite hilarious arrangement in which I made some unexpected friends and learned a ton. I also learned a lot and shared a lot from the Colombian guys who were living across the hall. Here you see me showing Jaime and Danielle how to make s'mores using a gas stove. But I eventually decided that I'd move to an environment that was a little bit more accommodating for a Fulbright fellow. That was right across the street from the Crown Plaza Hotel. I was living with my Israeli-American friend Yaron, who was a Harvard-educated law professor in a business school in Shanghai, who happened to be writing a novel in Panama about corruption, incidentally. So it was a pretty good match and very convenient, and we had a lot of good times while we were there. Besides little incidents like a murder happening right in our parking lot in broad daylight, the apartment was pretty conducive to the rest of my social life in Capital City. Probably my biggest extracurricular activity in Panama was salsa dancing. Now, for anybody who had ever seen my rare attempts at dancing before I left for Panama, this probably sounds pretty amusing. But believe it or not, after 9 months in 4 different academies, including a 4-day workshop in Costa Rica, I can now actually hold my own on the salsa floor. Some other friends of mine. On the top left is my friend Rose Cromwell, who was another American Fulbrighter in town at the same time I was. On the top right was my professor of salsa, Jose Manuel. In the bottom left, all the way to the right, is Sabrina, who is a Fulbrighter that was studying in Bocas del Toro. And in the bottom right is us playing blackjack at my friend's dining room table. Here, from top left to bottom right, are my friends Alina and Shirley, my friends Enrique and Edson, probably my 2 best guy friends while I was in the country, and the Icasa family, who are some Panamanians that frequently invited me over for dinner, included me in family activities, and overall made me feel right at home in Panama. Here's a couple of photos that I captured while traveling into the interior with some of my Panamanian friends, as well as a photo from my going away party my last night at the beginning of August. I also had my immediate family members visit me in 2 separate installments, and I even got them to hang out with some of my Panamanian friends while they were in the country. Finally, 3 of my best American buds, Jeff, Mike, and Brian, all visited me in July and accompanied me to an extremely cool weekend in small town Anton, where we ventured far off the tourist path. My friend Carla, who is the queen of the town's annual festival, hooked us up with her dad and uncle, who took us all around the farmland on horses, who introduced us to fruits and vegetables that we'd never even seen before, and who even let us harvest and produce our own sugarcane juice. We also taught Carla's small-town friends how to play flip cup, and even won money on a cockfight, which is perfectly legal in Panama. So now that I've made my fortune betting on cock, what are my plans for the future? Well, it turns out that I've abandoned my initial intentions to go to Yale in favor of a master's in education technology at Columbia University in New York. I'll be living on the Upper West Side, right where this green arrow shows, if you follow it down with me. Not too far from Columbus Avenue and Broadway. It's right on 93rd Street. And if you look at the satellite here, it's that gray building in the foreground. So feel free to come visit me whenever you can. You can hit me up at the same email address and cell phone number that I've always had. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves, don't be strangers, and remember, practice safe eating and use condiments. I love you guys.